Hi everybody, I'm Rick Beato. On today's episode, I'd like to respond to a question that I got from one of my viewers last week. And it was a question without a simple answer, but I'm going to try my best. And the question was, how do you make a living in the music business? Well, that's become more difficult as the past 10 years have proven for most musicians. People always look back to the advent of streaming and Napster that, as the downfall of the music industry as far as a way to make a living. But it actually started a little bit before that. It started in 1996 with a thing called the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that was signed by Bill Clinton that essentially took what in 1983 was 50 companies owned 90% of all the media and entertainment companies in the United States, and it shrank down to 6. And those 6 are Comcast, Walt Disney, 20th Century Fox, Time Warner, CBS, and Viacom. These 6 companies control everything that we hear, see, and read in the United States. With less companies involved, that means less people are making the decision, or people have much, much more power consolidated to make a decision on what is going to be played. This led to more homogenized playlists that we see today. I mean, it's still the case. You didn't see the effects immediately in the business until 1999 when Napster came out. That's when it started to, the shift really started to happen. That happened to be the biggest year. 99 and 2000 were the biggest years in the music business from a profit point of view. I believe 2000 was the biggest year of all time with about $2.45 billion of profit versus 2015, which was down to about $240 million in profit. This has made it more difficult for people that are not only artists, but producers, engineers, and everything associated with that. Record labels, publishers, you name it, to make a living. I'll give you an example. Around 2005, when I was producing records, a typical new band would have a budget. This would be a rock band, but a typical new signing that didn't have a buzz around it would have about a $150,000 budget to make their record. Bands that would have bidding wars, whereas multiple labels would bid for them, could be anywhere up to $2 million or more. I've had instances where bands had budgets like that, where they would have in their budget, they get a bidding war with 5-6 labels are interested in signing them, and they get things like $150,000 equipment budget, $250,000 tour support, $750,000 to make their first record, and they get a guaranteed second record. Well, none of that happens anymore. That stopped happening in the mid-2000s. Nowadays, people that get signed, no matter what the genre is, are typically people that are already successful. And the labels act as an amplifier to that. They can take things that are happening on, if somebody has a hit on YouTube, or somebody has a hit on radio, or whatever it may be, the labels can come in and do that. Now, typically what the labels do is they sign acts to 360 deals. A 360 deal essentially takes your live performance money, a portion of it, your publishing, your record royalties, your merchandise, essentially everything that you make money at, the record label takes a piece of. That didn't used to be the case. People that signed record deals before 2005 were not signed to these kind of deals, but this has really become the way that record deals happen now. One of the reasons being is that there's just not the amount of money that is produced from selling physical or digital recordings. So as I said before, the music industry hit its peak in the year 2000. You had many acts that would have, multi-platinum records. You'd have the bands like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys selling 10 million records each or more. And that just doesn't happen this year. I mean, if a band or an artist sells 1 million records, it's a miracle. As of a couple months ago, only Drake, Taylor Swift, and Adele had sold over 1 million records this year. let me put that in perspective on what that means. In the old days, a producer's typical advance on a song would be about $3,000, depending on who the producer was. This is your generic production cost. So the label pays you $3,000 per track, and that's a recoupable amount of money, meaning that it has to be paid back before you start making royalties. Not only that, but the record has to recoup its cost before you start making royalties. And sometimes records just never recoup because they spend so much money on them. So it's not just the money that you make. If you do 10 songs and you make $30,000, it's not just that money that needs to be recouped. The money is recouped from the band's profit that they get from their percentage from the label. Back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a typical new band would get 13 points, meaning 13 percentage points, out of which 3 points would go to the producer and 1 point would go to the mixer. A big time producer that produces hits, like a Max Martin, people like that, would have, can get $100,000 for a track. Plus, they're a writer on it, so they're making publishing royalties. Now, since there are so few records being sold now, the amount of people that are able to make a living from that is just diminished dramatically. And that just doesn't fall upon the artist or the label. It's writers. In Nashville, for example, if you were a writer 20 years ago, you could survive off having album tracks, meaning non-singles on records, because you would have records that would be gold records, plenty of records, or platinum records, and your album tracks would be worth some real money. I mean, today an album track may be worth, if you're part of a three-way split, $3,500, something like that. And the only way to really make it is to have a hit single. Now, people always wonder how much hit singles bring in for a writer or an artist. Well, really, it's the writer that are the ones that are making the money. Typically, a song, for example, in country, let's say, a number one country song will bring in from terrestrial radio, like BMI and ASCAP, that collect money from radio airplay, will bring in about $1 million. A top 5 song will bring in $1 million in country. And in pop music, it'll bring in probably $1 to $3 million. So that money is split between the writers. If there's 3 writers and it's $3 million, everybody gets $1 million. There's also your mechanical royalties, which is the physical sale of a physical CD or a digital download that you make money on. 1 million digital downloads is probably worth about $1 million or so. You may get that money, you may not get that money. There's so many elements to this that making money from mechanical royalties is next to impossible. And most bands that make records never ever make any money from physical sales of their record. They have this thing called cross-collateralization. So if you're a band that does 3 records, let's say you spend $300,000 on your first record but only make back $250,000. Well, that $50,000 that you didn't recoup gets added onto your next bill. And your next record costs $400,000, but you only made $250,000 on that. So there's an extra $150,000 plus the $50,000. That's $200,000. Well, you'll probably get dropped then. But if you didn't get dropped, then that debt carries on to the next record and so on and so forth. So labels have always found creative ways of not paying the artist in it on things like that. The next thing is, how do you make money off digital streaming? That's been the real trick. Now, there is a thing called Sound Exchange that many people don't know about and don't sign up for. But Sound Exchange is the way that you can make money from digital streaming rights. Things like YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music. Sound Exchange will pay you if you're a performer or a producer on a particular record. I get Sound Exchange checks every 3 months because I've been a producer on certain records that are anything that you sign up for, that on records that you've produced or played on, you can make money from Sound Exchange as long as the paperwork is turned in on time. I had a thing where there's a record that I did years ago that's done really well in the digital realm that the contract was never signed with sound to agree to the sound exchange money. And I never received it until recently, but I didn't receive the money when that record was actually selling a lot. So sound exchange is something you need to really look into. Merchandise, selling t-shirts, selling anything with your band name on it, or you as a solo artist, your name on it. Developing a YouTube following can be a hugely successful thing for artists. One of the things about YouTube and music is, if you look at the top people on YouTube, and I'm not talking about in the top 10, the things that are people playing with toys, or the gamers that have 50 million subscribers. I'm talking about music, the top music people, the Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber's, people like that. They have billions and billions of plays of their songs. And one of the things about music that's unique on YouTube is that people will listen to the same song over and over and over and over. And because of that, if you have advertising, you see the ads that come up on YouTube videos, like this one, for example, that advertising pays YouTube or Google, and then YouTube gives the artist or the creator a small amount of that. Now, when you're talking about 13 billion plays, let's say Justin Bieber's got 13 billion views on his the aggregate number of all of his videos, and he's making, let's say, $3,000 per million, because that's pretty much what YouTube works out to be, let's say, roughly. Then that's a lot of money. Now, the way that YouTube pays out is really difficult to understand. I don't understand it. I've been making videos here for the last 5-6 months, and that's it. And what I've gathered is there's a thing called watch time. It's not how many views you have, it's how long people watch your videos for. And that's kind of what you're paid on. The more watch time you have, the more money Google pays you. And it's a very small amount. Anyways, but you can become a massively big artist by having huge hit songs as a YouTube artist, or as an artist that, somebody that starts on YouTube and then generates millions of subscribers and has millions of views of their videos, and then actually sells physical or digital product, meaning songs or merchandise, things like that. You've got things like live performance. That's a huge, huge money maker. The top earners in the music business are people that have huge live draws. There's really no substitute for that, and that's something that can't be taken. It can't be stolen. They can't steal your live performance. Same thing with merch. I mean, people can do knockoffs on your merch, but really, merch is a great way to sell things that and generate income for your as an artist or as a band to keep things moving with your career. So if you got digital sales, you have vinyl sales. If you're a hip indie rock band and you have a great following, you can sell vinyl. Anybody can sell vinyl. You don't have to be a hip indie rock band. You can be a not hip band and sell vinyl still. But vinyl sales are another way to make money in the music business. There's this whole idea of people that go to recording schools, and I see this all the time. So I'm a music producer, and I record rock bands, country bands, things like that. I've done it for 20 years. Well, the amount of studios that there were 20 years ago, there were a tremendous amount of studios. People would go to studios all the time because people had budgets to make records. Now people make records in their own personal studios, whether they're in their house or they're in a freestanding building, whatever it may be. Records are made by producers or engineers without huge studios and huge tracking rooms. It's just the way the music business is now because there's no budgets for it. So people that go to recording schools and get degrees, the ability to work in the business has shrunk so much that unless you're going there to make a living as a producer using the skills that you've acquired, the skills of being an engineer, there's just not the available work out there in studios to do it. I've had the same engineer for the past 16 going on 17 years that I've been working with. He went to Full Sail, and I've never needed another one. So anyone else that has gone, to any of these recording schools and come out, and I used to see them all the time when I worked in a commercial studio. I had a room in a commercial studio. I would see guys that would go intern for a year, 2 years, and they'd never get a session ever. And this is back when there were actually budgets to make records. They would do that, and then eventually they would just give up and move on and get another kind of job. So that's one thing that you really need to keep in mind if you're going to go out there and get a degree in recording engineering. If you can't put it to use as a producer, then it's not going to be much good. You're not going to be able to make a living doing that. Now, one of the things about being successful as a producer, it's not just about being successful making records. You have to be a writer, because that is a skill that labels expect. If you get hired by a label, that you're able to do. You can contribute on the songs. You have to be able to engineer. You have to be able to mix. You have to be able to find talent. Nowadays, you have to be able to understand social media, because social media is not only for the artist, but it's for the producers as well. I don't do social media on my production work. I still work full-time as a producer, but when you look at my YouTube channel or you look at my Facebook page, there's nothing about any projects that I'm doing. Almost nothing. I rarely post anything about what I'm working on. That's just something that I've never done. People wonder why, and I'm not sure why. I still work as a producer. I get calls from bands and solo artists, and if any of you out there are wondering if I take on projects, I still do. I don't take on a lot of them. I take on only really good ones that I want to do, but I still work as a producer full-time. The things that I do in my production work is I do write. I have a publishing deal, and I've had one on and off since 1991. I'm with Sony Publishing now. I've written many songs on major label records. I've had a #1 song as a writer. I've had platinum records as a producer. I've had gold records as a producer. But the ability to really make a living off things like royalties nowadays is almost impossible as a producer. Producers in the 90s, for example, you'd find people like Brendan O'Brien, for example, or Rick Rubin, that would produce these multiple multi-platinum records over the course of 10 years. They might have had, Brendan probably had 20, 30, 40 multi-platinum records. And he's making money. He makes his 3 points as a producer like everybody does, but he also mixes his records, so he makes an extra point for mixing it too. Plus, guys like that get a higher fee to make a record as well. But those production points don't really pay anything anymore. Typically, a producer back then would get 3 points, like I was saying, meaning 3 percentage points based on net profit. Those 3 points would equal about $300 and some odd thousand per million. So if something went 5 times platinum, you'd have 300,000 times 5, so $1.5 million. So a 10 million selling record would be $3 million. If you look at Adele, for example, whose last record sold 10 million, 21 sold 10 million, more than 10 million. So the producer on that would have gotten that kind of money on that. I think it probably sold 12, 15 million worldwide. But these instances are so rare that they're almost impossible. And that's not really a sustainable way to do it. Since no records sell 1 million copies, virtually no records sell over 1 million copies, there's really no money in the back end of making records unless you're a writer. So that particular skill is extremely important because labels will hire you if you can write and are a producer. If you can also engineer and play instruments, that is huge. I do a lot of records where I play everything on it, and because of being able to play multiple instruments, it's enabled me to work for years. People want to know at record labels, if they're going to hire you, that not only can you deliver the record, but if you play, it cuts down the cost tremendously. It also lets them know or have an idea on what they're going to get. And a lot of the big producers of the day, the guys like Brendan O'Brien, played on a lot of records. Daniel Lanois, they play on all the records that they do. They're really accomplished players. Their sound is tied in with the sound of the groups they work with. Daniel Lanois did Peter Gabriel's So record in 1986 and came right back in 87 and did Joshua Tree with U2. Those are incredibly different sounding records. He's able to do records with really varied artists and make incredibly great records that don't sound like him, but he does have a sound, no question about it. So those avenues are very difficult, but the songwriting part of it is probably the most important part because that's still the place where you can make money. If I were going to give advice to people out there, most important thing would be hone your abilities as a writer. If you're a pop musician, a rock musician, a country musician, if you're into hip hop, anything, any style of music, the writing part of it is the most valuable. More important than anything, really, because those are the people that generate money. When you look at artists that on the country charts, for example, most artists don't write their own songs. So they don't make any money from that. If their songs become huge hits, it's the writers that are making all the money. It's the Max Martins out there. It's the Red Akins in country, people like that, or Dallas Davidson. Your ability as a writer is directly linked to your ability to make a successful income. Getting your songs placed is incredibly difficult, though. It's next to impossible. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's very, very difficult. You also have licensing. Licensing for film and TV is another avenue to make money. It's become much more viable for people nowadays. It can be either in a television show, in a movie, it can be an original song, or it can be library music that is could be instrumental orchestral music. Many different forms. There's tons of libraries out there. Getting your music placed is not easy. People that work for libraries that are established entities that have been around for a long time, where the people that run them have connections, direct connections with movie studios and with television producers, have a tremendous advantage in actually getting their placed for performance in those different mediums. But that is a really great way to make money if you're good at it. A lot of these things that I'm talking about are all about how good you are at doing it. If you're not a great player, and you're not a great engineer, then being a producer is going to be really difficult. Now, you may be a great songwriter, but getting production work is going to be next to impossible. You have to really be able to do it all. That's what people look for. So in the production part of it, that's kind of a key thing. On the writing part, doing licensing, you can take your time, you can work on pieces, do library music, like I said, and try and get it placed. You can put things up on YouTube. You can make videos with a static image and sell them to iTunes. You can also write music for film or television. You can do this. It's more difficult to do if you don't live in a city that has a lot of post-production work. I know plenty of people that make their living writing for commercials. I know people that make their living writing scores for films, but it's difficult. It's very difficult. You have to have connections, and you need to usually start small with doing independent films. That's the best way to do it. Or you might meet somebody that hears something that you did that they like the sound of, and they hire you. Because there's people that are rock musicians that become film scoring people. Danny Elfman. So that's a possibility as well. A Hollywood film score, I'm not sure what people make, $1 million for a score or something like that, depending on if it's a big blockbuster. But that is definitely another viable way to make money. You can get known by doing things like putting up, like I was saying, a static image and writing your own cues and putting them out there for people to see. And somebody might come across them and say, wow, I like the sound of this. I like this guy's style. You could do videos like I'm doing, and somebody hears something and says, I want you to do a film score for me. Film scoring is another avenue to make a living, though it's very difficult. There are also ways to make money through distributors. If you're an artist and you could be a classical artist, you could be a jazz artist, you could be a rock artist or a pop artist, a hip hop artist, using companies like TuneCore or CD Baby. There are distributors for people that are not signed to record labels. They take a cut to put your record out. They get it into all the different media streams, whether it's Rhapsody, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora. In exchange for that, you pay a yearly fee. I believe that TuneCore, for example, is about $50 a year per project, per record. Now, they send you a royalty statement every month online, and if you are selling things, you get a check. So that is one of the ways. So you've got essentially here licensing, publishing if you're a writer, sound exchange if you get music that's played on YouTube, on Spotify, things like that. That's for digital performances. Then you have for terrestrial radio and things like that, you have ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC that collect royalties for that. They collect royalties for things that on broadcast TV as well. You have money as a songwriter from your publishing company. If you own your own publishing, the way publishing works real fast is that for every dollar that comes in, 50 cents goes to the writer and 50 cents goes to the publisher. Now, if there are multiple writers, let's say there's 2 writers, those 2 writers split that 50 cents of the writer's share and they get 50 cents apiece. The publisher's share, those 2 writers have their own publishing company, but maybe they both have a publishing deal with a different publishing company. So that 50 cents would get split down to 25, and usually most publishing deals would be 50-50. So each of those 25 cents then would be 12.5 cents. 12.5 cents to each publishing company, and then 12.5 cents to each writer. So they get their 25 cents of the publisher's share plus 12.5 cents apiece. Okay, I know it's really confusing, so that would be 37.5 cents a piece and then 12.5 cents to the publishing company. This is what really gets people confused about how publishing works and how money comes in. I'm going to make it even simpler for people. You write a song and it gets on the radio and money comes in for it, and you're the writer and you have a publishing deal. So let's say $2 comes in for the song. $1 goes to the writer, you. Okay, that's just your own money. The other dollar goes to the publisher. Now the publisher, if you have a 50-50 deal, meaning that you split the money with the publisher 50-50, out of that other dollar, 50 cents goes to you and 50 cents goes to your publishing company. Okay, it's that simple. If you have multiple writers, some might have publishing deals, some might not. So that publishing money always gets split between the publisher, which might be yourself, and the publishing company, depending on what your deal. Maybe you only have a 10% administration deal. So out of that dollar that's there, 90 cents goes to you and 10 cents goes to your publishing company for administration purposes. So that's a thing that most people have trouble wrapping their head around. It's very complicated, but that's the general essence of it, is that there's a writer share and a publisher share for every song. The writer share is yours no matter what. So it's split right down the middle. For every $2 that comes in, $1 goes to the writers. If there's 3 writers, you split it 3 ways. If there's 2 writers, you split it 2 ways. If there's 5 writers, you split it 5 ways. And the other goes to the publisher's side, and that gets divvied up depending on what people have publishing deals or whatever it is. But half of that money, as long as you own your publishing, at least, and have 50-50 deals, some of that money will be coming back to you on the publisher's side as well. Now, if you have an advance for your publishing and you haven't recouped the advance, let's say you get signed and they give you $100,000, until you've earned that $100,000 back, you don't get any of the money of the publisher's share. You still get your writer's share, but you do not get the publisher's share. Typically, if it's a deal in Nashville, many people work on a year-to-year basis with a deal where they'll get an advance. Let's say it's $100,000 a year that they will pay you, and you have to deliver X amount of songs that are demoed and that they're accepted. They don't have to all get placed, but you get a salary, you get a draw each month. So it might be $10,000 a month. A typical new publishing deal nowadays, if it's $20,000, that's amazing. That would kind of be the going rate with a publishing deal. 20 years ago, anybody that got a record deal would get a $200,000 to $300,000 publishing deal without selling a record, period, no matter what genre you're in. That's just the way it used to be. But that money doesn't exist anymore because, once again, the ability to sell it has been greatly diminished. You got to investigate things like Sound Exchange, and you have to sign up for it. You got to make sure that your music that you have out there is on there if you're a producer or a performer or a writer. And try and take advantage of that, because royalties through ASCAP and BMI, you'll see people, I know people that have had hit songs that have sold millions and millions of copies. They'll get digital performances, let's say 40 million plays in a quarter. That would be Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Rhapsody, whatever it might be. And they'll make $1,500. That's it. It's hard to make direct comparisons between terrestrial radio, because you got to figure a number one song at terrestrial radio may hit 100 million people, have the reach of. In country music, a number one song hits about 60 million people. That means that's the audience that it's heard, that has heard that particular song over the course of a week. And you're talking about getting X amount of plays. Like a number one song might have 25,000 plays on the 2,500 country stations in the United States in a particular week. A number one song can bring in a quarter, can get maybe 600,000 plays on terrestrial radio. When I say terrestrial, I mean actual radio stations, physical radio stations that broadcast. So there's big money in that. That's probably where the biggest money is. But Sound Exchange can really help you dramatically. If you have a solo new age piano record that you want to put out, sign up for Sound Exchange. You maybe get into some compilation CDs, or your record might sell really well or get played digitally. People are streaming it, and then that's how you get paid on it. Performing rights organizations like ASCAP and BMI and CSAC don't collect much money for these things. This is why you need to be signed up to Sound Exchange. Your ability to navigate through social media, I can't stress hard enough, though. You have to keep learning new forms of social media as they come out. But you pick only a few that you master. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, those are big ones. You have things like Snapchat. You have whatever new is coming out. By the time, a year from now, these will all be, maybe there will be completely different ones. I'm sure there will be. But when I say master them, I mean you have to understand how each of them work. What drives viewership? There's algorithms associated with each of these things. And for artists, it's really difficult to understand this stuff because you have to study. Or you hire people that do this professionally. And there's not a lot of people that really do it well professionally. People ask me, how is it possible that Dylan has had these viral videos, one after another? And they're not just, we put out 5 videos, but they've been in multiple uploads. So there's probably 15 different, maybe more videos, and they've gone viral everywhere they go. Well, there is either a novelty factor with a viral video, or you're doing the impossible. That's kind of my take on the way to make a living in the music business. I'm not talking about teaching. I'm not talking about, because that's a very viable way, and I've been a teacher, and essentially that's what I'm doing here. Many teachers have live students and they have Skype students. And by the way, if I'm taking on 1 day's worth of students, I've been approached by many, many people about Skype lessons, and I've done a couple. But I'm going to set aside 1 day a week now to do some. If you're interested in taking any Skype lessons with me, whether it's composition lessons, ear training, any type of improvisational, conceptual lessons, I'm taking on a few students, so just write to me at myrickbeato1@gmail.com. So teaching and live performance, merchandise, things like that, they're the kind of standard ways that you make a living in the music business. And that really hasn't changed. It's just the amount of money that you can make, and it's shifted over to different things. If you become a YouTube star and get 1 million subscribers, you're making a lot of money. If you're getting 1 million views a day, it's easier for artists to do that because people will listen to songs over and over. They're not going to necessarily watch my videos on an esoteric scale. They might watch some of my videos over and over, but some of my videos they're going to watch, 1 or 2 times. Songs people will play over and over. They'll consume it. If they consume it on YouTube, for example, they will listen to it 1 billion times. They can. So that's a real viable way. And a lot of bands don't make videos for their songs, and they need to. I tell every group I work with, make a video for every song on your record. Whether it's a lyric video is a must. You do that for every video. And then take your songs that are going to be your singles that you think and that you talk to your friends and they think are your best songs. Try and get as many opinions as you can. But make actual full-length videos for those. And you need to post content all the time. Just keep uploading is kind of the mantra that you hear in social media. So that's my view on how to make a living in the music business. So that's my view on how to make a living as a musician. If you guys have any questions, once again, you're always welcome to write in the comment section below here. You can post it on my Instagram page, or you can write me personally at rickbeato1@gmail.com. I get back to people when they write me, and I get back to the comments whenever I can. So I will try and respond to every comment I can. That's all for now. Please subscribe here and tell your friends about my channel if you haven't already. If you're interested in the Beato book, in the material that is the precursor to what my videos typically are about, there's the whole stuff that leads up to that's in the Beato book, which is why I do these more advanced videos. You can always look that up and find out the kind of genesis of these concepts. That's all for now. I'm Rick Beato. Thank you for watching.